Welcome to our online presentation, and thank you for taking the time to consider this unique opportunity. We're confident you won't regret doing so. Basically, we're presenting information on the global crisis, how it affects us all, and more importantly, how you can protect yourself using the gold purchase plan from KB Edelmetall AG. You will also learn how, working from home, you can earn a part-time or full-time income during this present economic crisis. Yes, even a very high income is possible right from the outset. There's no risk involved and no costs for products, licenses, monthly qualifications, etc., etc. We would kindly ask you to watch the following presentation with an open mind. You'll be able to verify everything with just a few clicks on your computer and then draw your own conclusions. As most of you know, everything started with the crisis in the US real estate market, a crisis resulting from low interest rates and easy credit, which led to an unstoppable chain of events. Too much real estate at sky-high prices. The real estate crisis fed into the bank crisis, where banks lost billions of dollars in mortgage defaults and write-downs, and then the crisis in the car industry. Now we hear of entire countries going bankrupt. Credit card debt, student loans, and unpayable leasing plans are probably the next bubbles that will burst. Banks and major corporations have become weak. This is not only leading to job losses, but is threatening the entire business sector and financial system. Governments are intervening by spending billions on stimulus packages, paid for by you, the taxpayer. US national debt has reached enormous heights. When they created this clock, nobody could foresee how bad the situation would get and that they'd run out of space. This is why they've now been forced to use the dollar sign position to accommodate the incredible number of 10 trillion US dollars. The US crisis developed into a global financial crisis, which is why governments around the world are spending more and more money trying both to help companies survive and save jobs. If you take Germany, for example, things are really getting out of hand. Government debt is setting alarming records. 474 euros are added to the national debt every second. That's 28,444 euros per minute, or more than 1.7 million euros per hour. How long can this continue? Questions are now being raised that would have been almost unthinkable a few years ago. Will governments go bankrupt? Well, Iceland did. And what about Greece? The national per capita debt in Greece and the US is nearly the same. We don't want to create panic, but the experts are 100% sure that the big crash is on its way. You could liken the situation to continually filling a barrel with water. It's not a question of whether some water will spill over, but when. Let me ask you a question. If you had the chance, would you protect yourself? And how? Well, it's easier than you think, but you have to change your way of thinking. Forget about the value of currency and think of the value of precious metals, such as gold or silver, instead. Gold has been used as a store of value for thousands of years. It survived every crisis and has always kept its value. You can take it with you anywhere, and it's always flexible. Experts recommend that you invest 5 to 20% of your assets in gold for financial security. Gold not only keeps its value, but has actually tripled in value over the last 10 years, and experts predict gold will at least double in value over the next 10 years. Incidentally, are you aware that using printed paper as money is a relatively recent invention? For in the past, money was gold. Long before the existence of paper currencies, gold was used to trade for goods or services. The US dollar was originally defined as a fixed amount of silver by weight. In 1900, this was changed to a fixed amount in gold of equivalent value. Various forms of paper currency were used at times, culminating in the existing system of Federal Reserve notes from 1913. Paper currency was always redeemable in gold or silver, and therefore served much like a check does today. Originally, Federal Reserve notes had to be backed by the equivalent amount of gold held by the Treasury. In 1934, they decided that the dollar only needed to be backed by 30% gold, so that they could print 70% more money without having security in gold. In 1971, the U.S. government announced it would no longer exchange gold for U.S. dollars held by foreigners. They continued to print increasing amounts of paper currency, but without any backing in gold, which is much the same as if you or I wrote checks but refused to allow them to be converted into money. Paper currency in the U.S. is now backed by nothing and is therefore essentially just worthless paper. Where original notes stated they were redeemable in gold coin, new notes simply state, "In God we trust." A similar situation applies to all currencies. In order to avert the current crisis, or to buy time, more money is now being printed at an alarming rate. This monetary inflation will inevitably lead to price inflation. In other words, paper currency will lose value. In over 3,500 years, no currency has had long-term sustainability. They've all lost value due to monetary inflation. Impossible? This information may seem hard to believe because the situation has been relatively stable over the last 60 years. But what is hard to imagine today may soon become reality. But do your own research. Just Google new global currency. The general public is becoming increasingly aware of this situation. In September 2009, Bild magazine interviewed Andreas Schmitz, president of the Association of German Banks. They asked him if massive money printing by central banks meant there was a threat of inflation. He replied saying, "In the next 18 to 24 months, inflation is not likely to be an issue. Then we can expect significantly higher prices because there is too much money in the market. Withdrawing this money again is like trying to push toothpaste back into the tube." How does gold react to inflation? Well, 100 years ago, a new family car cost $850, or around 1.3 kilos of gold. You can still buy a new car today with 1.3 kilos of gold because there's been no inflation with gold. But you can't, however, say the same for the $850. Efficiency improvements and technological advances would lead to declining prices for virtually all goods if these improvements were not outpaced by monetary inflation, an expanding money supply. Gold has been neglected as a form of money and store of value for almost 30 years. Its price has been rising steadily since 2001 as more people become aware of the consequences of monetary inflation, and gold catches up with the huge monetary expansion seen during these same 30 years. So not only is gold a great store of value, but the time is now ripe to invest in gold, as the price still has a lot of catching up to do. A recent article in the German Focus magazine reports that Germany experienced hyperinflation during the early 1920s and again between 1945 to 1948. During these times, people had nothing of value with which to make purchases, and the true value of gold was revealed. In 1945 to 1948, you could feed a whole family for 1 year with only 3 grams of gold. With 5 grams of gold, you could buy a house. With 2 grams, you could buy a car, and with 3, you could buy an aeroplane. It may be important in times of crises to have your gold denominated in small units. It's cheaper to buy a 1 kilo bar than 1,000 1-gram bars, but it's very hard to buy goods or services with a kilo bar of gold